Beep boop boopity boop. Bow wow. Dilly 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 wow. Whittle whittle wow. All right, we're skipping the intro music. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate that. Oh my God, what's going on over there?
I have no idea what you're talking about. This is how I look every day.
What have you done with Gray Waste Tim?
He's here. He's with us.
He's with
We're
us.
all
Yeah.
with us.
I don't think any of your do you do any of you're not allowed to play uncle in that mask, are you? Like you
Uh,
don't wear that around the
beneath,
children, right?
beneath the mask, another mask.
Oh, Jesus Christ. There's never an answer to this Shadowbinder question. It's clearly a an Ashai nesting doll beneath the red light. Oh,
No,
there's Grey Waste Tim, and he's still got
there's
a
Gray
ski
Wolf
mask
there.
on. That's a little unsettling also. Maskception. Yes, well, welcome. We are here to talk about Are the Gods Real? And
Hmm.
what's interesting, Tim, yeah, take it, do whatever you need to do. Subscribe to the Grey Waste Tim channel. Thank you everyone for watching my Ashai and Shadowbinder videos. They are just smoking. They're tearing up the charts. I couldn't have done it without Grey Waste Tim, obviously. So hopefully you guys also followed the link and checked out Grey Waste Tim's Stidge video, and you're all Stidge up. So today we're gonna run with that concept and answer a question that a lot of you guys asked in the comments of either the Shadowbinders or the Ashai video, which is, well, if R'hllor is a space demon, does that mean the Great Other is good? Or is it, oops, all space demons or all demon gods, you might say? And I believe the answer is the latter. So we're gonna start with the question of are the gods real, but we're gonna steer it in the direction of is George kind of softly implying, not that this is ever gonna leap to the forefront of the story necessarily, but is George in his world building implying that all these gods that people are worshiping are kind of Lovecraftian entities? So that is where this is going. And of course, Tim is here. Tim, how did you enjoy? How did I do? Summarizing Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard, and whatever else.
Oh, you did really well. The only critique I would have is just that, contrary to popular belief, the oily black stone is not an original Lovecraft creation. He is the one that made it famous, but it's actually Robert E. Howard, the creator of Conan, who first used the term oily black stone. So that's just a common misconception.
Oh, actually, I didn't have a conception of that at all. I didn't know that the idea of oily stone was something that Martin cribbed. So can you explain that to us then?
Yeah, so the first time, so up until then, Lovecraft had always used weird stones. Usually it was a gray stone like the city of Ib, where the little frogmen dance to their water lizard statue. Or there was idols of Cthulhu, which were made from what is described as a greasy gray green stone, the color of sea foam. And George plays with all of that gray and green as a common color motif. But the first time the words oily black stone in that order show up is actually in the Robert E. Howard story, The Black Stone, in which cult members go to this oily black stone monolith. They give up a human sacrifice and they summon this giant toad god by the name of Sathagwa. And so Lovecraft loved the Black Stone. He took the idea of the oily Black Stone and he crafted the artifact that is the Shining Trapezahedron. And then, of course, George plays homage to both of these things with the Isle of Toads, where looking people have a giant idol made of oily black stone of a giant toad.
Cool. So what do we know about the origin of the quote unquote Howard's greasy black stone?
He never really made one. The It's just that the monolith was a octagonal shape, a foot carved into precision, which makes me think of like the fused dragonstone underneath the high tower. Lovecraft, he just sort of created this for this one-off because it's from one of his non-Conan stories. It was him trying to write his own Lovecraft style story because
Gotcha.
Lovecraft and his friends always cribbed off of one another, and it's more or less Robert E. Howard throwing the black stone and saying, "Hey, Howard, Lovecraft, tell me what you think of this." And Lovecraft's like, "I love it. let me build on it. And then that became a running theme. And then guys like Clark Ashton Smith and August Derleth are there saying, hey, mom says it's our time to play with the Blackstone too. And then all these different guys come together and start creating putting their own, injecting their own flavor into it. And that's how we end up with the end result, which is the Shining Trapezohedron. It's the same thing with other things like the Necronomicon, other banned books, other artifacts that appear in Lovecraft. They're constantly changing hands, and George is familiar not only with Lovecraft, but of course with Howard, with Clark Ashton Smith, with Robert Bloch. These guys are all mentioned at some point in Dream Songs, and he has created his own fusion of this. Because at the end of the day, what A Song of Ice and Fire is like, it is a fusion of all these works that inspired George. You have old folklore horror stories mixed with Poe-style gothic horror, Lovecraftian cosmic horror. You have the sword and sorcery of Conan the Barbarian and Elric of Melnibide, and you have the high fantasy of Tolkien, all packed together to create this story. And that's what then leads us to the question of, are the gods real? Well, it kind of depends on where he's drawing from more. In Lovecraft, yes, the gods are real, but they are extraterrestrial creatures. So they're not really gods. It's more of man's perception of them. Ancient man looks at them as gods. Man living during the time of the witch trial sees them as demons. More modern man, a lot of Lovecraft characters tend to be like professors and librarians and archaeologists. They'll start looking at them as space creatures. And then sometimes you get people who see them as all of the above. In Conan the Barbarian, whether or not the gods are real is sometimes ambiguous. Howard tended to kind of teeter on whether or not the gods were real. I talked about how with George, sometimes we feel like George has said we're never going to see literal gods on page, but sometimes we feel like some kind of outside force giving events a little push. In Conan, that same hand would come through the ether, but it would just full on punch the world in when the gods get involved there. And then of course Tolkien, the Eru Ilúvatar, all of his creations are real. They just have more of a hands-off, or supposed to have a hands-off approach.
Yeah, they basically they're so powerful that they can't take too much of a hand in the narrative, but they certainly do exist and do take hands in the narrative from time to time, because Sauron is a Maiar and he's loose, causing trouble for the elves and men. So sometimes they need a little help from upstairs or across the Western Ocean, as it were. In Elric, the gods are real. They're chaos lords and things. And when we say gods, obviously we're speaking in a loose fantasy sense. And we should go into that. But that was a very nice pivot that you did there, Tim. You went from talking about the oily black stone to sort of summarizing the context of where George is coming from. Because that's what George is doing, is he's writing a modern fantasy story where having gods taking an overt presence is a little bit out of style and also doesn't fit with our modern sensibilities where people are less religious. George himself grew up religious, kind of went, I don't know if he called himself an atheist, but I don't think he's a devout Catholic anymore. He certainly questioned his religious upbringing. That's probably a safe thing to say, like a lot of us. And so you've done a good job of highlighting that almost all the stories where George is coming from, the stuff he grew up reading, they tend to have gods, most of them, in some way or another. It's interesting that Howard was already restricting that a little bit. That is interesting. But the point of all these black stones is that they come from some other dimension or outer space, and they channel the presence of other deities that aren't from Earth onto Earth, basically, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's why I don't think we're ever going to see some kind of like Deus Ex Machina in A Song of Ice and Fire, the way we saw with some of these older tales. And again, a lot of these guys, like, the thing with Conan stories is that since most of them are standalone stories, everything kind of resets. That's how a guy like Conan, who should have died dozens, if not hundreds of times, can come back in the next story and all his wounds are healed. That's not something that happens in A Song of Ice and Fire. What happens to a character carries over. John still has his scars from the eagle. He has his burnt hand. Things will heal, but they don't really go away. They don't reset.
Well, and I've got a lot of John Resurrection talk coming. I'm working on a Cold Hands video right now that is going to be out next week or the following week. It depends on the Night of the Seven Kingdoms trailer, Tim. Comic-Con is this week, and the word is that we're going to get the Night of the Seven Kingdoms trailer on Thursday. So if that happens, I will jump on the live stream probably maybe like an hour after it comes out is usually what I do. I take just enough time to download it and cut up the scenes in Premiere, and then I will jump on and I will stream live to try to be first, essentially, because other people are faster, Tim, at making like the edited video, breaking down the trailer. There's no way I can keep up with these MFers. They get up early. I don't know how they do it. So the best way I can compete is to go live, but I will be doing that. If there's a trailer on Thursday, I will go live. Tim, you're at work. I'd invite you to, you'd have to play hooky. You'll be at work, but.
Nah, I already got to play hooky in December.
Yeah, you're responsible. You're solid. That's why you're Gray Waste Tim. You don't play hooky. That's part of your character. So I will go live if there is a trailer. I will break it down as scene by scene, and then I'll hold the Cold Hands video for Tuesday of the following week because I've gotten a little behind, guys. I was trying to get ahead on my schedule. So if there's a trailer, I will take advantage of that to hold the Cold Hands for next week. So it'll be Cold Hands, which is also Green Zombie Theory. And then following that, it'll be, I don't know what the title's going to be, but it's something about Melisandre's destiny. Okay, I see you. I see you. Wording, Sean. Ringer. The word you're looking for is hooky player. In any case, Cold Hands, and then it'll be a Melisandre's destiny or Melisandre's plan, Melisandre's endgame, something like that. Yes, titles. But it'll be about, you know, what's going down with John's resurrection, but also like, does Melisandre have a destiny beyond that? And what might that be? So I'm trying to keep it spooky for October, you know, shy, Cold Hands, Melisandre, witches, zombies.
'Tis the season.
So, yeah. So Tim, did you like my video?
Yes. Enjoyed it very, very much. I'm also, of course, going all spooky. Red light bulbs. The house is all Halloween decked out for the month.
It does look a little spookier in there. Basically, what I'm trying to ask you is, did you feel like a proud dad seeing me talk about Lovecraft as if I knew about it?
I had a feeling that my name was going to be dropped, and of course, that picture of me in the sailor outfit apparently is the gift that keeps on giving. It popping out from the five forts is a great gag. But I mean, yeah. When I saw like it's a trap, but has a Hedra, and I was like, it became the DiCaprio meme.
Well, Tim, I'm not trying to tell you how to run your YouTube channel, but I'm just saying that would make a good little circular profile pictures. You as the captain there, but you do what you want. I know you got a cool logo and everything. I'm actually going to get Atlantis Morissette to make a cartoon face of me for my icon. Atlantis, if you're out there, I still want that. Because that's the game. Everyone's doing faces now, Tim. We got to do faces. So I've resisted doing the reaction faces on my thumbnails. I haven't done that yet, but maybe. Anyway, Mickey wants to do it on Script Wolves. Have seriously. We'll see if we try that out. Gustavo, David, since you plan making a new Cold Hands video, could you talk about the idea of him being one of the last hero's companions? Oh yes, that is covered. We're doing it's Green Zombies theory, full on updated Green Zombies theory and Cold Hands. We're going to talk about what he is and who he is. So I expect that to be another smash hit. And just real quick, guys, thank you very much. Very, very much for watching the Ishai and the Shadowlands videos. The Ishai video is like the best start that a video has ever had on my channel, pretty much. So like, yeah, I worked hard on it. Now I feel great about it. Appreciate y'all. So, okay. So the point, again, trope wise, the whole point of the Black Stone in all these stories is that it channels Lovecraftian deities. It channels alien presence. How heavy that presence is depends on the story. It might just be a presence like in Event Horizon, the movie Event Horizon. Like you don't see the devil. It inhabits Sam Neill and, speaks through him, but you don't see the entity. Sometimes it's like that. Sometimes we see the entity, like Cthulhu, Tsagwa, or whatever. Say it. What is it?
Tsagwa.
Tsagwa.
But
It's
yeah,
not too hard once you get it.
But what the Blackstone is it's a conduit. It
Yes.
is meant to channel the energy, and what happens next all depends on both the practitioner, the sacrifice that was made, and of course how the god on the other hand just happens to be feeling that day. Usually it's used to summon Nyarlathotep, but I've said many times Nyarlathotep is a troll. He really is. He's a chaos god. He thinks world-ending extinction events are just the funniest thing ever. But it can be used to call upon other gods, like in Howard's Tale, it calls on Tsagwa. Other times it can be used almost like a glass candle. Sometimes it's not calling the gods over in a physical force. Sometimes it is just being used as a means of communication, trying to get information, trying to get to see into these other worlds, to see what lays at the end of the universe out in the void, and what might be exist in alternate universes. Again, it depends on the god that's calling and for what purpose the stone is being used.
And so, that's nice. Carol Funk got the gift membership. That's nice. Thank you, Steve. And so in Ice and Fire, Ray Blackfire, we're just getting started. No worries. So in Ice and Fire, Tim, there's basically two versions of this. There's the oily black stone, which we've been talking about, and also the glass candles. The glass candles, they function as a slightly less mysterious thing than the oily stone. Like the oily stone, we don't even know who made it or where it comes from. The candles are mysterious, but we do know the Valerians used them. We know mostly what they do. Marwyn explains it pretty well. There might be, maybe we can contact the Great Empire of the Dawn Ghosts or something, which we'll talk about them too. But certainly the glass candle is very trapezohedron-like. It is part of the larger fantasy archetype of the mysterious black stone that lets you talk to beings and see the future and stuff like that.
Yeah, because on the surface, it just seems like they're smartphones. If someone's able to, like Quaith is talking to Marwyn from Old Town to Ashai, that's like you and me. You're on the west end and I'm on the east end. But that's just a very surface level. Once we start going deeper and deeper, much like smartphones, we realize no, these things can probably do a lot more.
So Emmett Shearer in the chat, he says, "Oil sounds like Ashai needs some freedom." Threw an American flag up there. It must need some liberation.
They do have slaves.
Yeah, no, for sure. Let's get right on over there. It's funny. Somebody else asked about Zelazny. I believe there are gods in Zelazny. I've read half of one of his books, and I didn't stop reading it because it was bad. I got distracted with something else and forgot to come back to it. So I need to finish that book and come back and report. I know that's a big influence on George, too. And if anybody wants to add in some Zelazny tips in the chat, I will try to look for them. So basically, the fact that George has put these glass candles, he's put this oily stone, he's even shaped two of them like Lovecraftian gods, Cthulhu and Tsagwa, the toad and the kraken. It's a very strong suggestion that these things are channeling deities. And actually, Charlie Vogel, although I do love Crowfoot's daughter's theory that oily black stone could be petrified shade of the evening since Weirwood stone turns into pale stone, I think all of this stuff that we're talking about is evidence against that theory. Because, like, the whole point of the black stone is it comes from space and it channels beings that aren't from Earth onto the Earth. And it can do that because they come from space. So the idea that it's a petrified tree doesn't really wash. And also, we have meteors everywhere. They're in all the legends. So it does seem like stuff fell from the sky. And then, so I don't know why that would work that way. I really think it's a matter of the shade trees were created in Ashai because they were growing there on the peninsula. Obviously, the whole peninsula got poisoned and shadowed. And so that's why the shade trees are oily and have all the common symbolism with the oily stone. How do you go on that, Tim?
Yeah, because like you said in the video, there isn't enough even a planet even like the dinosaur killer meteor would not provide enough stone to build a city as huge as Ashai. What I see more likely happening is that Ashai was built of normal materials, wood and stone back in the day, but this meteor and whatever corruptive influence, like the meteor of the Colorado Shy, corrupting everything organic, that then has an effect on the wood and stone used to create the original Ashai and transforms it into this oily black stone. That's how what I see going down.
Yeah, and I believe the shade tree theory is like Ashai would have been built out of shade wood and then petrified into oily stone, I think.
Yeah. I could see like if that's the case, if it was made from shade trees, like brought over from Ulthos across the straits, and then this corrupting influence just like speeds up the petrification process of shade trees, just like how weirwood trees petrify. That would be my best explanation as to how the entire city of Ashai, as big as it is, became constructed of this. Is that no, it was probably regular normal building materials that got corrupted by this malevolent influence.
Well, I think that's why George tells us that even the streets are oily black stone. You wouldn't build the streets out of wood.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you might build them out of regular stone that gets transformed. And also, like, it's not just the oily stone we're trying to explain. It's the entire peninsula, the gold, the plants, the air, the river. That's why I was kind of building all that up in the Ashai Stygiai video. What happened here? Everything has been transformed. So if there were trees that grew on the peninsula, they would have been transformed too. And that's where I think the shade trees come from, is Ashai. And I think the people in Karth got them from Ashai and transplanted them. Go ahead, Tim.
That was like my initial idea when I made the color out of Ashai video. What was the idea that Ashai is a city size example of what happened to the Gardner farm in the Lovecraft tale, where the vegetation was corrupted, the animals started to disintegrate and die, the water was poisoned. You take this, what happens in color out of space on a small farm, and then you multiply it, you macro size it into an entire city. That is what I see happening. And so to me, the idea is that this meteor is just corrupting all organic matter. That is why animals don't last long. That is why the water is polluted. That is why the trees and plants don't grow there, or very little grows there. All that seems to grow besides ghost grass is these poison plants, like what's used to make the strangler. It's like all that survives there is just like the hardiest of weeds, and that's about it.
Yep, and so I really think all of that points to a transformation of the entire area, glass candles definitely also inspired by Palantirs, and Palantirs ultimately get back to the captured light of the two trees, which also became the sun and the moon. So it kind of gets back to starlight as well there with the Cimmerils and the Palantirs. It's kind of like the clean version of this trope, you know. But there's still, like, what does the Palantir do? It puts you in touch with Sauron, you know, in the story. That's not obviously the original design, but that's what it does. So it functions. You can see why they're compatible ideas. And this is what what Martin does with all of his influences. He sees, the Shining Trapezohedron and the Palantir have something in common. And so he creates something that draws on both. A couple of somethings, actually. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the Valerians. The only god I acknowledge is Nanavegar, of course. And if you want a Nanavegar shirt, you can get that at our bonfire store at the link below in the video description. But basically, the dragons worshipped, the Valerians rather, they named their dragons after gods, which I suspect means that their gods were dragons. Now, this could be part of this could just be ancestor worship. It could be a part of the idea that the spirits in the dragons are their ancestor ghosts, spirits stuffed in there. So they could be worshiping their ancestors and dragon gods all at the same time. But if you want to go back, like, dragons come from the shadow, supposedly. And that's where the meteor is. So Some people in the comments, Tim, have asked if there is a connection there because dragons come from the moon. There's this conflation with dragons coming from the moon. So did the first spirits that are in the dragons, did they come on the meteor somehow? Like, is there a way that the first spirits in the dragons are one and the same as this R'hllor spirit or something related?
That one's yeah, because original drag. If we think of the idea of the moon cracking and splitting, yeah, what are the spirits of original dragons, if not the spirits of some kind of extraterrestrial creature? That kind of that almost sounds like Scientology with like Xenu and the Thetans.
Well, it's the same thing with the others. Like George has given the others these star eyes, and they act a little bit like visitors. These tall, ghostly shapes. So they're kind of alien-like, as well as like icy she or whatever. And so that could imply, and I know that you think there's probably a meteor in the heart of winter, an oily black stone. And I've long suspected that could be the case. And so what it starts to look like, and this is the genesis for this stream really, is like if these meteors, which are basically moon meteors, but they are moon meteors that got hit by the comet. So like, where did the entity come from? I don't know. Maybe these gods were in the moons because, they could be moons of ice and fire and sources of magic, or maybe that all comes from the comet. And so you have this comet alien intelligence smashing into two different kinds of moons, creating different meteors and different gods. I'm not sure, but it sure seems like the planet got sprayed with these meteors. And so you have some falling into the sea, you have some falling in a shy, and potentially one in the heart of winter. And so the question is, are all these different religions basically worshiping different or even the same alien entity? Like the deep ones, they brought the Kraken stone ashore at Old Wick. Like there is a part of deep one's culture that's tied to oily stone and potentially worshiping oily stone. And then we talked about Ashai, we talked about the heart of winter. So if those three are all meteor gods basically that they're worshiping, then you can see how all the religions in Ice and Fire, and we'll get to the Weirwoods as well, that could be what's going on.
Yeah, and that becomes like different cultural interpretations of the same thing. It's like how we've discussed before. Every culture has a flood myth. Every culture has a creation myth. Every culture has some kind of dragon myth. And we also did our Ice and Fire moon stream, and it seems like it makes sense to me that the Heart of Darkness and the Heart of Winter would both have some kind of black stone at their center. But as we talked about in the Ice and Fire moons, we're constantly seeing the fire moons dying and the ice moons keeping on. And it seems like the same concept with Ashai. Ashai is the Heart of Shadow, but given its geography, where it sits in line with Sithorios in the south, it should be the Heart of Fire. If the north is the Heart of Ice, then something that far south should be the Heart of Fire. But the fire has been snuffed out. The lights have been turned off. That is why R'hllor, as both a god of fire and a god of shadow, makes so much sense. Because he's representing both, yet one aspect of him, as far as the Shadowlands go, is entirely missing. And for people who live in the Shadowlands, light and fire would be very, very important. It makes sense that they would make that their patron deity.
So that's and it is a little bit like Wheel of Time, how the male half of the magic side in has been tainted and corrupted, and it's like not safe to use. I do think Martin is kind of pulling from that. But there is something going on with the ice magic. It's infected, basically. And that's what we see with the others. Like they have this cold fire inside of them. Nothing burns like the cold. They got these cold blue star eyes inside of them. Literally, it's a picture of a star that's frozen inside of ice. And that might be what's in the heart of winter, is a star that's frozen in ice, essentially. So we see the pattern with all of the ice places. We talked about this in the Moons of Ice and Fire. There's always some black meteor object in the center of the ice moon places. So like in the in the White Sword Tower. That's where we find Black Oathkeeper, and Jamie hides it under his black oak chair in a room with everything else is white. White Weirwood table, white clothes, white walls, but then there's this black oak chair, and under the black chair is where he has the black sword. Then in the Eyrie, the giant's lance is a mountain of dark stone covered up by all this ice with an ice temple and all this stuff. There's White Harbor has the old black stone fortress, the Wolf's Den, buried kind of, it's forgotten. It's on the other side of the river, so it's kind of underneath. But they have to go through the tunnels to get there also. So there's more, but basically the pattern would go extrapolate to the heart of winter. We should find some black stone there buried under all that ice. And that's what the others are showing us in their eyes, basically.
Yeah. And then, of course, you also pointed out in your last video, with the Shy being surrounded by the mountains of the Morn, that name alone, Morn, it gives you the idea of morning, of sunrise, of dawn. But in Tolkien, the MOR suffix can mean shadow and death, and that's why we got Mordor and I always forget the name of the city in Mordor. That's like Minas Morgulus or something. You're muted.
Minas Morgul.
Minas Morgul, yeah. So it's George using wordplay. He makes you think of morning and sunrise and dawn, but he could also just as well be taking from Tolkien, because Tolkien was a linguist and using this more word for shadow and death.
Yeah, I had pretty fun following that etymology. I actually cut out a little bit more because there's Morna White Mask. Morna White Mask has a white Weirwood mask, but that makes you think of the Black Gate, where there's a white Weirwood face, but it's called the Black Gate. And the Black Gate is the Black Gate of Moranin, which is the one that goes into Mordor. And of course, so there's this whole black and white symbolism, obviously. House of Black and White at the Eyrie with the moon door. It's got the black darkness behind it. Black Gate is actually a white Weirwood gate. And then, Morna White Mask. Her name means black, but she has the white mask. So I figured out that that's actually a repetition of the theme, but only once you understand the Tolkien idea.
Yeah. And she's another thing building up to this idea of there being black stone up in the far north, because she is inverted Quaithe. Quaithe's got the red lacquer mask. She's wearing the white mask. So they're both together. They make up both Weirwood colors. Quaithe is from a Shy where it should be hot. It should be more of a fire land, but it's a shadow land. And Morna's up in the north. She's a woods witch. Quaithe most likely would be a woods witch if a Shy could have woods.
Yeah, and Morna, that's a good remark in the chat there. Morna also does the male and female Baphomet kind of thing. She says she can be John's man or his woman. So yeah, that's a similar harmony of opposites idea. So we see that ice and fire, day and night, male and female, all these ideas. Yeah, it's a very alchemical concept. So basically, we've got R'hllor. I talked about R'hllor a lot. People have wondered if R'hllor was like a dragon spirit or some sort of fire demon or Azor Ahai or something like that. So I think he's a good fit for the Asshai moon meteor, especially because everything having to do with R'hllorism is so tied to Asshai. Melisandre comes from Asshai, etc. When we talk about the Deep Ones, I have long joked, Tim, that the Hammer of the Waters created an underwater civil war because to them, the Arm of Dorne, when it was intact, was like a wall, keeping the North Sea and the baby Narrow Sea, essentially, which was just an extension of the North Sea, separate from the Sunset Sea. And so once the Arm of Dorne breaks, it's like the wall coming down, and then the Merlings from the north can fight the Deep Ones from the south. So that's just, dumb tinfoil or whatever. However, it does seem like the meteor landing underwater may have impacted or even created Deep One's culture.
Yeah, because we get stories like of in the Thousand Isles when the water recedes and we see these statues of Squamish fish-headed gods. Well, if those are under the water, then that would imply that the beings that sculpted them were under the water, not the people. Or we accept the other story that this was a drowned kingdom. But even if this is the remnants of a drowned kingdom, the fact that they were building fish-headed statues to begin with already raises a lot of questions. But the big thing with the Hammer of the Waters is, like, once you knock down that barrier and you have this influx of, now you have what was frozen water from a normally frozen sea, like the Shivering Sea, now entering into the Summer Sea, the catastrophic effects that would have, how the weather patterns would change, and that being another clue to this whole, why are the seasons like so out of whack? Well, this could be another one. Like, sea patterns have a great effect on weather, and when you have, like, when a frozen sea meets a warm sea all of a sudden and they just completely collide like that, obviously there's going to be some effects.
Yeah, so do you think, and one thing I will throw out is, like, we can't be too locked in that all these meteors fell for the first time at the time of the long night. It could be that there are cycles of this going on, and that some of this stuff is older. It would probably be over-interpreting to sort of lock into one idea about that. I do think it's whatever was the long night event is, like, the important one. But, I mean, the Great Empire of the Dawn mythology starts with the Pearl Palanquin that sounds like a white meteor coming down to Earth. And they've got the flaming swords and stuff. So it does seem like, this isn't all starting at the long night. And the deep ones usually are like millions of years old in most of Lovecraft's stories. That doesn't mean that they are in Ice and Fire, though. It could be that there were fish people and that the black stone falling into the sea mutated them. And that began a change in their culture. That's kind of what we're talking about everywhere else, is like there's people there already. The black stone falls. And not only does it have magic powers, but, like, it definitely can cause mutations. The animals and the plants are mutated and deformed in Asshai. God knows what the Shadowbinders look like. It's not Uncle Tim that they have under the mask there. It's something more terrifying even than that. So, yeah. So the idea, this could be some sort of impetus for the deep ones being the way that they are now. And we don't even know how they are now versus how they used to be. But I'm just sort of highlighting the idea that these meteors cause cultural impacts and mutations. They empower people with magic. They put people under the influence of these entities that give them very dark notions. So
yeah,
that might be a good place to bring up the quotes that you have from Lovecraft.
Yeah, because when we're talking about, like, before we even get to humans, a lot of these fantasy stories, Lovecraft included, before we get to humans, we have our elder races, and George is no exception. Our elder races that we know the most about are the children of the forest and the giants, and then also possibly deep ones that he borrowed from Lovecraft and threw into the story, but we haven't seen them on page directly the way we have with the children and the giants. Conan does the same thing. We have the Serpent Men of Valusia. We have the Giant Kings who come up after the Cataclysm. And Elric refers to, they're called the Young Kingdoms because of how young they are in comparison to the Melnibonéans who've been around for far, far, far longer. And then I'm sure there's even older. I haven't finished Elric, but I'm sure you could elaborate. I'm sure there's even older races than the Melnibonéans.
They have parallel universes and stuff too. So I have no idea how deep the world building actually goes. Yeah.
Oh, gee, yeah.
Yeah. So Gustavo, it is that the black liquid of the xenomorph is a good comparison. Potentially, this is something that's going to cause different effects based on who it interacts with and where it lands. That does seem to be like what's happening here, because obviously the others are a little different than, the people from Asshai. But the fact that, think about the Shadowbinder video. I pointed out that creating others probably does involve some amount of shadow binding. So that would make sense if the wizards of the others, Night's Queen or whatever, if they are drawing power from a black meteor in the heart of winter, they're doing shadow binding, just like the people in Ashai are. Like, that could make sense. They're both doing a different version of the same magic, essentially. That could be the case. And then the other one is the Weirwoods. There are some other random gods we'll track down, like the Shrouded Lord, and we'll talk about the Seven and stuff. But the Weirwoods, these are the other major gods that we know. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's R'hllor, Great Other, Drowned God, and the old gods of the Weirwood. Now, we know that the old gods of the Weirwood are green seer spirits. Those aren't alien spirits. We know that. However, the Weirwoods are acting like a fungus. And there have been ideas about them being space fungus because they're not normal plants or whatever. And the key thing here is all the mythology about the lightning striking the tree. Or not, well, the myth about that. Because the thunderbolt in that myth is a symbol of the moon meteor. It's the fire of the gods striking the tree. And the tree becoming set on fire allows Grey King to possess the fire of the gods for mankind. So this is the exact concept. We are taking, and this is why ancient cultures saw meteors as sacred, is because they fell from space. Mm-hmm. They are a fallen star. So of course it's got star magic or star beings with it. So this is what the Grey King myth is describing. And this burning tree is a symbol for the Weirwood tree. And it got struck by the storm god's thunderbolt. And then it was transformed and people could access its magic. So this has always suggested that the meteors somehow altered the Weirwoods and made them accessible to human beings. And I think that couples well with Azor Ahai invading the Weirwood net, because Azor Ahai, at least this version of Azor Ahai, the guy that invades the Weirwood net, he seems to be the dark version of this guy. He's more like the Bloodstone Emperor. So he's invading the Weirwood net, potentially using the magic of this meteor. Mm-hmm. So the Weirwood net looks corrupted and infected, and some part of that might be the meteor magic.
Yeah, because as you know, like we see in the calendar artwork, for example, the Isle of Faces, it seems like Weirwoods used to be green. So maybe Weirwoods are a natural tree, but again, it goes back to the color out of space. This meteor dropping and corrupting organic matter, making it behave differently. It behaves out of whack. And then, of course, there is the space fungus idea is another Lovecrafted thing that comes from the fungi from Yuggoth, otherwise known as the Migo, who are described as being more vegetable than animal, but essentially they're plant people. And in the Whisper from the Darkness, where the Migo are the main antagonists, the stories about them, they are referred to by the Scottish and Irish immigrants that settle around Arkham. They refer to them actually as the little people of the swamp and forest. And that is why George takes the idea. That's why the Weirwoods and the Children of the Forest go so hand in hand. It's George taking that idea and then breaking it into two different things, making, instead of having our tree people like the Migo, we make the plants a plant and the people sort of a plant people, but they have this symbiotic relationship.
Well, plus there's the idea of like green men.
Mm-hmm.
Are green men?
Yeah, little green men from Mars.
Exactly. And it does seem like George is playing with that idea softly at times. We've noticed that before. So yeah, because think about the change. Like the Weirwoods used to be white and green and only used by elves, essentially. And now they're kind of half dead, and the humans are using them and doing blood magic rituals with them. Like, they changed a lot. So
we've said, like, it seems like they're stuck in their autumn phase because the red leaves. It's like green leaves, they change color, but the season for the Weirwoods, they're perpetually stuck in autumn. Spring and summer never came back for them.
Yeah. Yep. And so it's basically like, well, yeah, it's just thematic overlay. Like the long night is a halting of the cycle of the seasons. And so the trees look like they're frozen in their cycle as well. And the thing that froze them is this long night event, which is the falling of the meteors. The other thing is like if you look at Bloodraven and you look at the Weirwood tree, there's a pretty consistent pattern that we see where there's a black dragon object in the roots of the Weirwood tree. And this is a reference to Norse myth where there's lots of serpents in the roots, Nidhogger and other things. Loki's also down there. But if you look at Bloodraven as the meteor, like he's sitting under the Weirwood tree, and the Weirwood tree is essentially eating it. Now, the Weirwood roots are described as grave worms, and so Bloodraven is a corpse, obviously. And the moon meteors are like corpses. They have tons of corpse symbolism because they are a piece of the moon corpse. And so, like, if you look at the High Tower is a Weirwood tree symbol, crowned with red flames that are red leaves, white tree trunk. What's on the bottom? Black stone. If you go to the Godswood, it's carpeted with leaves that have turned black with rot. And there's also the Black Pond, where Ned dips his black dragon sword into the pond. So there's a pretty consistent idea of like a black dragon thing or black stone goes under the Weirwood tree. And this has always made me wonder, like, are the Weirwood trees containing the poison of these meteors, either in the Heart of Winter or on the Isle of Faces? Because, like, why doesn't Westeros look like a Shy? Why is a Shy poisoned and shadowed and Westeros isn't? I've always wondered, maybe it's the Weirwoods containing the poison, absorbing it or something like that, because that's what, they got all the grave worm symbols.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could be like the shade trees succumb to it and the Weirwoods are fighting tooth and nail to hang on. But it seems like over time that battle might be lost, especially as worship of the old gods begins to is phasing out. The Seven have taken over. The North still holds true, but even then, the North. I've said the North is a lot more andalized than I think it would like to let on. We see that with the Starks. John not like Brandon the Daughterless, for example, not knowing that when Bale the Bard shows up, that he's using the old tongue word for deceiver. It's like, well, if you're blood of the first men, shouldn't you know the old tongue? And it's like, no, the Starks have lost their culture. They don't know the old tongue. They speak the common tongue. They actually have lost a lot of their first men connections, I guess we could say, which means they're more Southernized. And that is why, like, Tormund Giantsbane, like in the show, will refer to Beyond the Wall as the true North, the ones that are really hanging on to this old first men culture that is sort of that as time goes by in the North is starting to fizzle out. And now worship of the Weirwoods is not as direct as it used to be. They're not making blood sacrifices like Bran sees. If anything, the Weirwoods are only indirectly getting blood from like battles or when Ned is cleaning his sword by the pond.
And why did you bring that up again?
To say the idea that the Weirwoods are trying to keep things. Your idea that the Weirwoods are trying to fight the pollution, that they're trying to fight the corruption. But I'm saying I think the Weirwoods at the moment, as time goes by, this is becoming more and more of a losing battle for the Weirwoods.
Well, this could be the same idea as the Weirwoods, like being the gates, the seals on the Dark One's prison, meaning the others in the Heart of Winter. Like they are, feeding the Weirwoods blood, could be strengthening those wards that keep the others at bay. And it could be that they're weakening because they're not getting blood sacrifice. And this is going to lead to whatever happens that causes the new long night. So, yeah, we could be talking about the same thing, sort of from different angles there. And so, yeah, you're left with the idea that R'hllor is a meteor demon. In the Heart of Winter, there could definitely be we'll come back to the Heart of Winter more. And then you've got the Deep Ones that look like their culture is shaped by Orly Blackstone, and the Weirwood trees seem infected. And this gets back to the whole Old Ones thing, where George is using the phrase Old Ones to describe the gods of the Weirwood trees. But the Old Ones in Lovecraft are literally the space deities.
Yep. Yeah, there's the Great Old Ones, and then there are the Elder Things, and these two groups are constantly at odds. And George uses both of these at times. But usually, more than most of the time, it's in reference to the various great old ones. That's what he does with Cthulhu as the drowned god. It's what he does with the Isle of Lang when the god queens go into the subterranean chambers and take congress with the old ones. And he dabbles in the line from Cthulhu that the old ones, the gods of the first men, go into the stones and into the rivers and under the sea.
So go ahead and cook with these quotes. I pulled them up and then we got sidetracked again. But go ahead and read a couple of these. This is the stuff that's in George's head when he's writing all this. So hopefully this will help it make sense if what we're saying isn't snapping into place yet.
Yeah, so first I start off with this. This is Conan the Barbarian from the story of the God and the Bull. I have known many gods. He who denies them is as blind as he who trusts them too deeply. And I feel like that is a running theme throughout A Song of Ice and Fire, which is characters that deny the gods like Euron, but characters that put too much faith in them in the like Melisandre. It's like, well, you're both wrong.
So it's Marwyn the Mage is correct, where it's like, oh yeah, prophecy, you can't trust it, but she probably is Azor Ahai Reborn, and maybe I should go help her.
Yeah, and that's what makes Conan such a great, because his god is Crom, who doesn't bother answering prayers, and that's also a reason why Conan is so jaded, and why Marwyn would probably have the same outlook on the gods as Conan. It's like, yeah, you can pray to them, but you're probably better off just trying to do things for yourself.
Yeah, and by the way, guys, don't let me forget, I am going to come back to the Isle of Faces question. I just want to do this first, but yeah, we'll come back to that. Go ahead, Tim.
So yeah, one of the most famous Lovecraft quotes is, "The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown." And what could be more unknown than the things that Lovecraft plays, which are the dark void of space, and on our own planet, what lurks beneath the sea. Because those are the two big ones. Because we've barely explored our own oceans, let alone our actual universe. And
well, there's two other places too, like the dark forest, like the haunted forest. That's where the others come from when we first see them. And then basically Ashai is like the underworld, caverns, volcanoes, shadowed valleys, you know.
Yeah, the river ash is the river Styx. Even it's glowing green and phosphorescent light. It's biologically, this is more than likely some kind of radioactive fallout, but symbolically, it makes it like the river Styx, and a big, usually in artistic depictions of the river Styx, usually it looks like it's glowing with the souls of the.
You're right about. I never connected those two ideas. You're totally right about that.
And connect that to the Dothraki legend, that not one that the world will end with the world covered in ghost grass. It's also said that ghost grass glows with the spirits of lost souls. So ghost grass growing along the banks of the river Ash. This becomes more river Styx symbolism of lost and tortured souls just wandering the banks of this polluted river.
Okay, so three things. One, that's really good. Two, there are pale blooms that grow in Morgul Vale that remind me of the ghost grass a little bit. I forgot to mention that. And three, the chat is cooking a lot today. I'm trying to keep up with you guys. Relore, if it sounds like anything, it sounds like relay or Ryla, I guess it is. Where's Cthulhu live streaming? In Ryla, right?
Ryla, the sunken city of Ryla, made of this gray-green seafoam stone.
Okay, so yeah, it's R''Lyeh. So yeah, Relore is as close as you could come if you wanted to make your own version of Ryla. So that is a clue that Relore is a space demon. And Tim, you just kind of made the point here that really snapped this in for me. All of these places where these magic deities are coming from are places of darkness. Deep under the sea, outer space, the dark forest, a shadow emerged from the dark of the wood, explicitly coming from the dark of the haunted forest. And then Ashai by the shadow, Relore, the god of flame and shadow. Even the Rhoynar worship the river, like their gods are under the river. They're down there in the darkness. Like the turtle surfaces only occasionally, and they're like, oh, look, it's the god. And then it goes back down. So all the gods come from the shadow and the darkness, Tim.
Yeah, and that's another Lovecraft connection, like the Haunter of the Dark, for example. Nyarlathotep, can't light becomes his weakness. That's why he wants to keep everything dark. That's why Neferin-Ka, the Black Pharaoh, builds a lightless tomb. It's why Cthulhu reigns from under the sea. It's why the fungi from Yuggoth is a distant planet out past Pluto. It's a cold, dark planet where they say the light of the sun is no more brighter than any other average star. All of these gods, all of these extraterrestrial Lovecraftian gods, they love the darkness. That is where they are strongest. And then for a really, really deep Lovecraft cut, this is one of his more lesser known stories called Two Black Bottles. In that story, two souls are housed inside of two black bottles, but they glow green with phosphorescence when the souls are emitting. So that's another, like, it's almost like the bottles are filled with water of the river Styx, and the souls inside of them glow when they're excited. Mute it. Mute. Mute. Mute.
I'm glad that you connected that, the souls inside the ghost grass to the glowing river ash, because you're exactly right. The classic paintings of the river Styx show the glowing spirits in it. So that does make a ton of sense. And then again, trying to keep up with the chat. You guys have lots of good ideas. Let's see, there was a super chat. There's also a constant of characters making an oath on the name of the river Styx, who is also a goddess. So yeah, everybody's swearing oaths to trees in Ice and Fire. But obviously there's a big connection with the River of Time and the Weirwood trees being weirs that regulate the river and all that stuff. And of course that happened because Styx, the goddess, sided with Zeus against the Titans. And so she was awarded this honor of oaths being sworn upon her river. But I don't know how strongly that's tied to... Well, I guess, I mean, yeah.
Her being the daughter of Titans, yet siding against them, kind of makes her like the good other in that sense.
Yeah, thematically, yeah.
The Titans
similar.
would be the others to the Olympian gods.
And so obviously the ghost grass, we've been mentioning the ghost grass, it's very comparable to the others. Tall blades, pale as milk glass like the others. Their swords are pale crystal. Their bones are like milk glass. The others are the spirits of the damned, and the others will cover the earth and snuff out all life, just like the ghost grass is prophesied to do. So this has always been a clue to me that, like, the origin of the others and the origin of the dragons and Azor Ahai, it's all tied to the same thing, which are these meteors. So we see that both in the eyes of the others and in this parallel of the ghost grass by the river Styx, or the river Ash, I guess. So that is very cool. And then, man, there was another, what was the other idea I was trying to hold on to? I got the relay one.
Yeah. Which is because it's another inversion, because Ryla is a sunken city. It's associated with water, yet R'hllor is a fire god. So this is dueling opposites again.
But there, of course, there are sunken cities dedicated to the oily stone. Those are the drowned halls. So yeah, he's just shuffled it around a bit. Yep. So let's, well, yeah, I don't want to come back to the Isle of Faces yet. Let's read this next quote.
So it is absolutely necessary for the peace and safety of mankind that some of Earth's dark, dead corners and unplumbed depths be let alone. Let sleeping abnormalities wake to resurgent life, and blasphemously surviving nightmares squirm and splash out of their black lairs to newer and wider conquests. And that is a quote from At the Mountains of Madness. But George, again, is playing with these themes of waking things that you like waking the dragons, waking giants from the earth. It's like, don't go treading into these territories. There's another, it's a very short line from the case of Dexter Ward, another Lovecraft story, which is, do not bring up that which you cannot put down. And I think George is really playing with that idea.
Yeah, so this is an idea we see very strongly in the very first fantasy story, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, reanimating the dead. And of course, the subtitle is The Modern Prometheus. So we're directly talking about obtaining the fire of the gods, something that we can't probably handle, the sword without a hilt that is sorcery. All right. And of course, on my Script Wolves channel, check out the link in the description below if you're not subscribed. Mickey and I are covering Alien Earth. And that's kind of the running theme with all the Aliens movies is these corporations are like, oh, we can bring the aliens home and study them and get their biotechnology and make humans long-lived or something. But of course, what happens is, they get all infected with xenomorphs and the infestation breaks out because nobody can really control these things, but people keep trying. So yeah, it's the same idea here. Definitely. Mm-hmm. And it's a super important idea in the genre. That's kind of what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So then from there, I move on to the Necronomicon. Because another thing that we got going on in George's world is these sort of banned books. We read banned books. That's Jock and Hagar's story going on, trying to find the death of dragons. We know that Baelor the Blessed burned a lot of books. Septon Barth's tales are, and Danny's the Dreamer. It's very hard to find copies of these books, and of course, same holds true in the Lovecraft world. In that we go to the Necronomicon.
Yeah, can I just pause you real quick? It's the Death of Dragons, aka Fire and Blood. In the universe, Fire and Blood is this book about dragon lore, and yeah, it's literally a blood-soaked book. So go ahead and read this. Yeah.
Yeah, so the Necronomicon is a Lovecraft creation. It's called The Book of the Dead. In world, it's authored by a man named Abdul Al-Hazred, known as the Mad Arab.
Azor Ahai, if you will.
And the original copy, supposedly written in blood and bound in flesh. All my Evil Dead fans, you might know, just as Lovecraft made the Black Stone famous, I would argue that Evil Dead is what really brought the Necronomicon into like the cultural zeitgeist.
So we should call Fire and Blood the Draconomicon.
We should actually, yeah, definitely. Patent pending, slighted it.
I'm surprised George didn't just do that.
Probably maybe felt like it'd be a little too on the nose.
Oh, I don't know. He's done some pretty on the nose stuff. I'll go ahead and read this one. The nethermost caverns are not for the fathoming of eyes that see, for their marvels are strange and terrific. Curse the ground where dead things live new and oddly bodied, and evil the mind that is held by no head. Happy is the tomb where no wizard hath lain, and happy the town at night whose wizards are all ashes. For it is of old rumor that the soul of the devil bought hastes not from this charnel clay, but fats and instructs the very worm that gnaws, till out of corruption horrid life springs. And the dull scavengers of earth, God, this guy had problems. The dull scavengers of earth wax craftily to vex it, and swell monstrous to plague it. Great holes are dug, where earth's pores ought to suffice, and things that have learnt to walk that ought to crawl. So this is all just like abomination, basically.
Yeah. The Necronomicon comes right out of the gate saying, like, hey, I know you want to use me for dark magic, but don't. This is actually your warning. Things that Euron's trying to do, don't do it. Things that pyromancers and all these other, like, aeromancers and anyone that's in a shy, don't do it. Again, Dexter Ward, don't bring up that which you cannot put down. The poor book tries to tell you itself, like, I know what you're going to do, and I highly, highly, highly suggest that you don't.
It just makes it more alluring, doesn't it? But yeah, it's nice that they do give you that warning. Like if you go past this page, all bets are off.
Happy is the tomb where no wizard has lain. Yeah, like the best cities are the ones that don't have sorcerers. The best cities are the quiet little towns where no one's trying to do dumb crap like this.
And a related question to are the gods real and are they all demons that has come up occasionally is like, is there any magic that isn't bad in the story? Basically, all the sorcery that we see is pretty twisted. There's not like the closest thing to something that we see that's not twisted is the skin changing of the Starks and their wolves. It seems to be consensual. Now, the thing is that we've seen that skin changing can be non-consensual. It can be used for body snatching. Varamir's Shadowcat and Snowbeer hate him. They hate his guts. They don't want to be imprisoned. So that can certainly get really dark. It's hard to say whether, like I said, it seems that the Starks and their wolves are, we don't ever get the sense that the wolves are fighting the kids. And in fact, the wolves seem to have awakened their gifts. So that's the closest thing I can find to something that isn't totally messed up. You have to be okay with astral projection, I guess. But beyond that, almost everything requires blood or human sacrifice, or just leads to some really dark stuff.
Yeah. And speaking on astral projection, this quote comes from the festival. That is the story that introduced the Bayaki, which I've talked about before. Those are the dead dragons that can fly through the vacuum of space. Again, George playing with this idea of dragons being meteors, dragons flying through space. But in Lovecraft, they are literally dragons flying through space, and they are dead dragons.
Yeah, and there's, like I said, there's a lot of corpse symbolism with the meteors. They are a piece of the moon corpse, and we just see that all over the place. So,
and I think Viserion is a Bayaki stand-in because he is a corpse-eating dragon. He is eating the corpses that are being flung out at Marine. He's the smallest and the skinniest one, which makes him be the one most likely to be corrupted by Euron, who is a king in yellow figure, because Hastur rides a Bayaki in Lovecraftian fiction.
Yeah, I really like how tight that is, because even without knowing any of that, you can see all this foreshadowing for Viserion being Euron's dragon, being tied to Victarion, Viserion. And check out my Victarion, Viserion video where I got into this. But yeah, I do think that the way this is going to happen is that the dragon horn is going to end up stuffing Victarion's spirit in the dragon, because he's going to blow it stupidly. And that's going to stuff him in the dragon. That will allow Euron to claim it. But that kind of means that Viserion is going to be a little bit of a slave, potentially. An enslaved dragon. It's hard to say how that's going to work, because Victarion doesn't like Euron. The key is that there's a blood connection. It's going to allow Euron to be the master of the dragon. The idea isn't that Victarion is going to do Euron a solid. Once he's been stuffed in the dragon, he's going to be a tool and a prisoner and a slave inside the dragon.
Yeah. And that is another, as if you couldn't take Lovecraft further, George is corrupting it, because to ride the Bayaki and have it serve you and have it let you travel through space with it, you have to drink what's called the Golden Mead, which is a very rich, sweet tea, but sweet wine. But Euron is drinking Shade of the Evening, which is bitter and tastes like rancid meat. And he is not going to be, this is not going to be like a good ride with the Bayaki where everything's supposed to be like a symbiotic thing. It is going to be him subjugating the dragon to his will. So the Shade of the Evening is like a corruption of the space mead. The thing that opens your mind and gets you onto the level of the Bayaki so that you can tame it and ride it without it just bucking you off.
And the reason why Shade of the Evening would get you in touch with these eldritch beings is because I think the shade trees were created in Ashai by the meteor impact. They were turned shady by the same thing that turned Ashai shady. And so they are infected with that magic and that poison. And so what are the Undying doing? They are extending their lifespan. They are feeding off of the energy of these shade trees, which are infected with space demon goo, if you will. So that kind of, and I was planning on getting back to the Undying, but they are effectively worshiping a power that ties back to the shadow, according to how I see it. And they're becoming shadows. Like they are so similar to the others. They're blue, but they're cold shadows that are only partially solid, partially insubstantial. Their lives are extended. They're gathered around this cold blue, corrupted blue heart. It's like dark blues. So it's a shadowed, bloody heart. It makes you think of a heart tree, but corrupted. It makes you think of the heart of winter. And and it's like this beating shadow. So yeah, I really think it's a good metaphor for there being the heart of a fallen star in the heart of winter.
Yeah. And I also think it makes sense for someone like Euron, who does not have any Valyrian blood that we know of. How does he form a sort of dragon bond? Well, he would have to use some kind of alternative methods, the Shade of the Evening being something like the Space Mead, something that opens your third eye and allows for this sort of bonding and mind meld to happen. But again, it's like the worst possible way of doing it.
Yeah, and so the Undying are both serving as sort of a symbol of what is in the heart of winter because of all that blue shadow, cold shadow stuff. But they're also, even just looking at them themselves, they are drawing power from the shadow through these trees. And that's why they're called Shade of the Evening trees. So, yeah, it's and even Crowfoot's daughter, it reverses the relationship, but it still connects the shade trees to the oily stone in Asshai. So they are drawing from the shadow, essentially, and becoming shadow-like. So then we've got, okay, so let's go back. Okay, let's go back to the Weirwoods for a second. We talked about how George is describing them as the old ones over and over. It's in all 5 books. Check out my Secret Origin of the Green Men, the old ones from Lang, the Sacred Isle of Lang. But yeah, George is calling the trees the old ones. And the Isle of Faces could be a Crater Lake island. The problem here is the time. Crater lakes need a long time to form because what happens is when the meteor turns all the rock when it hits to molten, into a molten state. And so there is this splashback effect that we often see in the middle, where you'll get this raised portion in the middle of a crater. And so if the circumstances lead to that crater eventually being filled with water, you can have the crater lake in the middle. And the God's Eye does look like a crater lake. However, if there's weirwoods all over the island, I'm not sure how that, like they'd have to get there after the meteor struck, because the meteor obliterates everything when it falls. So then what were the weirwoods brought there afterwards? I don't think so. Like, I tend to think not. If the God's Eye is a crater lake, it would have been like a million years ago, like the very first cycle of all of this stuff, maybe like a long effing time ago. Otherwise, George is just playing fast and loose with geology and time and stuff, and that could be the case, but I don't think so. What do you think, Tim?
I mean, it is a fantasy story. He can, at the end of the day, he can do whatever he wants. He's even said, he could write like, "Oh, a UFO lands and everyone dies," and he has mentioned he has done tongue-in-cheek phrases in the book, like when the red comet comes back, which is a sign that it's going to come back and things are going to happen. So he's already played fast and loose with a lot of his timey-wimey stuff, like the Starks being in power for 8,000 years is already one that's sort of really unbelievable. No dynasty has lasted that long.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
Yeah.
And the wall is too tall. So, yeah, it could be. It certainly has the symbolism of it. I mean, symbolically, the God's Eye Lake represents the sun and moon eclipse alignment that gets hit with the comet. So, that's why we have all these dragons falling into the God's Eye Lake, because it's supposed to depict the dragon comet striking the sun and moon eclipse alignment. So yeah, it could be. And shout out to the YouTube channel An American Thinks, who pioneered the God's Eye Crater Lake video. He's got a cool, or the theory. He's got a cool video, a couple of videos on that. Let's see here.
The joke is a reference to John Carpenter's film Dark Star. Oh, geez, Dark Star. And then, yeah, so Gerald Dane might actually be a 2-for-1 reference, not just to Grateful Dead, but also to John Carpenter.
How so? Explain that to me. I don't know the movie.
I think more about him stealing Dawn, and I'd have to think on it. I just think Hmm.
No, just what happened in the movie approximately is what I was asking.
What the hell happened in Dark Star? It's been so long since I've seen it. George showed Dark Star at his theater as a fan.
Dark Star
Uh,
drives an IROC. Yeah, that's such a good call.
yeah. Someone refresh me. What was the plot of Dark Star again?
Okay, we'll wait for somebody to get in. So to go back to Ashai, because I forgot, this is one of the things that slipped my mind. The color out of space really convinces me too. Again, going back to the question of like, are the shade trees created by the shadow of Ashai, or is the oily stone petrified shade wood? If you look at the color out of space, I really think this is the model that George has in his head. A meteor lands, the corruption spreads out from there, and everything turns into gray ash, into a gray waste, and everything dies or becomes twisted and poisoned. And the dark god invades everyone's minds and drives them crazy. Like that literally is what it seems like happened in Ashai with the Bloodstone Emperor. And when you combine that with Enoch Bowen finding the shining trapezohedron, which came from space, and then starting the cult of starry wisdom, it's like, oh, Bloodstone Emperor found a black stone from space and started the cult of starry wisdom. Like, George is directly implying that Bloodstone Emperor is worshiping a space god. Like, that is not a far-reaching theory. That is what he is implying. And it becomes very clear when you read all this stuff that he's drawing from.
Yeah. And it's not just in a shot, it's in the everything past the bones, like everything that we're told were the borders of the great empire, the Dawn, is all going through this. Like the patrimony of Hirkun is now reduced to three cities because of the widespread desertification. What once was a great inland lake is now the dry deep, and the Great Sand Sea. Same thing with the going even further east, like, and then we're told like Yee, which is still forested, is now having a influx of grayscale. So it seems like just like everything out east, it's just like over time it's just slowly eroding. It's like this thing that's emanating from Ashai and Stagai is making its presence felt all the way up and out to the bones and out to the five forts and everything past it. It's a slow creeping death.
And it affects everything. Like everything. Like the gold, the food, the stone, the trees, the people, the river, all of it.
Because they say like even the gold and gemstones from Ashai has like a malicious feel to it, like the gemstones and the gold itself is cursed and tainted.
The plot, the summary of Dark Star is sentient ships search for unstable planets that might jeopardize future colonization. Well, he did that in Night Flyers, didn't he, George? With the ships that are sentient.
I haven't read Night Flyers yet.
I haven't either, but I know that that's in there.
Gotta get on that one.
DM Collins says, is the House of Black and White right on its list of gods that are all death gods? Yes and no. If so, why is the black goat there but not R'hllor? Well, what's interesting is Jaqen H'ghar does swear by R'hllor. He swears by the old gods and him of fire. So they acknowledge his existence. And in another line, I think the many-faced god says, like, all the gods are one, really. So it's not just all the death gods, but they seem to honor the ones that are specifically death gods. I don't know. Maybe they do have R'hllor in there somewhere, but he's not listed.
Yeah.
I think it's, like I said, I think it's a little bit of a mystery for us to figure out that R'hllor is in fact a demon and nobody that we want to mess with.
It could be that he was there and Arya just didn't recognize him. She recognizes the black goat because she had been at Harrenhal when it was under the control of Vargo Hoat. So it makes sense that one stands out to her, but she's not going to know all of these different gods. So he could have been there and she just went unnoticed.
And of course, Lion of Night is in there. The black marble statue with the lion-headed man. And Charlie, I need to read up on Zelazny. And then the other thing that we haven't mentioned here at all is Elden Ring. Because it turns out in Elden Ring, it's oops all space demons. And I'm just summarizing here what people have told me in the comments. But as soon as I made that video, people were like, Dave, in Elden Ring, there's space demon gods for sure. 100%. So
yeah. I only know I've tried watch. I don't play many video games, but I tried to learn about Elden Ring by watching the cutscenes, and I just kind of feel like I need more context to really get what's going on in there.
well, there's this thing called the Elden Beast that apparently comes out of nowhere when you think you have beaten the game, and then you got to fight this horrific enemy called the Elden Beast, and it's a meteor demon basically. And I think there's some other meteor action in the corruption of the world tree or something like that as well. So, and Miyazaki is a big Lovecraft fan also. So when him and George are kind of already on the same page, so it's hard to say that like everything in Elden Ring obviously doesn't come from George. It's a collaboration. But the guy he's collaborating with has read some of these same books. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say that Elden Ring is full of material, not that was meant for Ice and Fire and wasn't kept. This is stuff that he's thinking about as part of the deep world building that's only ever going to be in the background. So what I'm doing with these kinds of videos is teasing it forward so we can see it in more focus than he's ever going to bring it into, like in the story proper. But this is just a fun way for George to create depth in his world and pay homage to these previous authors. So he's softly implying that, you know, all these forces that are driving the various magics are these, you know, incomprehensible entities from other dimensions or space or wherever. Now, the whole idea is like, if all the gods are demons, then, well, who's the good guy? Well, it's the people. It's up to the people to balance all these powers out and to treat each other with empathy and build the world they want to live in and stuff. You want to be wary of the temperature extremist gods, I think.
Yeah.
There's a sentient star in Elden Ring called Astil, nature born of the void, that steals the night sky from a city. Well, there you go. Very cool. So then one of the gods that we were going to see on page was the Shrouded Lord. Supposedly like the first stone man or something in the river. George wrote a chapter where Tyrion meets the Shrouded Lord, but it's kind of like his father. And then he felt it was too much or something, and so he cut it.
Yeah. He felt it was too fantastical for the story he was putting on, because he's trying... At the moment, George is still trying to keep this sort of a low magic world, and the Shrouded Lord just seemed too high fantasy. What I find funny is that a lot of George's edits tend to happen in Tyrion chapters. It happens 3 times that I know of. One is this Lost Shrouded Lord chapter. Another is his history lesson with Fagon. That's in the original drafts for Feast that are now at Texas University, where they talk about the War of the Nine Penny Kings. And then there was the original road trip with Illyrio, where he dropped the word sword and high volantine, and George cut it because he felt like it revealed too much. So it seems like Tyrion is the character who kind of gives away too much, and George has to always go back and rewrite them. Mute it.
So it's hard to say what he was planning on the Shrouded Lord being. Like, what entity was it that he was going to be talking to? Is this really like the spirit of Green Garen living in the river somehow? That one's a little harder to connect to our meteors. There's not really.
I kind of figured maybe it was supposed to be like a dream sequence, like if Tyrion gets knocked out by one of the stone men on the River Royne, and that's how he meets the Shrouded Lord.
Yeah, the idea that it might have been looking like his father somehow too makes it sound like a dream. Yeah, true.
Yeah, probably because, well, one of the other theories is that the current Shrouded Lord might actually be Girion, his uncle Girion, who went looking for Brightroar.
Right. And so essentially what people have been mostly thinking about with gods, and what I've mostly been thinking about, is like people who went into the Weirwood net and became spirits that are just like kind of living forever somehow. Or maybe the Great Empire of the Dawn gemstone spirits are living in some sort of ethereal plane that's accessed through the glass candles. Or maybe there's a collective consciousness supported by all the dragon spirits where all the Valyrian ancestors are living. That seems to be like it could be the case. That's mostly what people have been thinking about. Like, okay, Martin's not going to have gods per se, but he does like, in a lot of his other stories, he likes to show you some weird explanation for how some intelligence, consciousness, or entity came to be worshipped as a god. So he likes to give you like a practical explanation for how these weird religions start. So people have been thinking along those lines for a long time. And it's mostly, like I said, Night's King or Night's Queen in the Weirwood net, the spirit of Azor Ahai out there somewhere. But I think this is honestly closer to what he's really thinking about, is all these other stories where the real gods are these intelligences that come from outer space.
Mm.
So I think that the wizards like Night's King or Azor Ahai are mostly just going to be servants, of these kinds of people.
Yeah, that lines up with, again, another big Lovecraft theme is that guys who go chasing after this kind of stuff, this eldritch knowledge that man was never meant to look upon, they always get corrupted somehow. They're either outright killed, they're possessed. And that is what I said. I think Euron's ultimate end is he's going to bite off more than he can chew. And if he does become Night's King, then it's going to be, is it really Euron piloting that, or is it going to be more like the spirit of the Great Other, who is now essentially skin-changed Euron? The fact that George has Bran doing what he does to Hodor, and why he has Varamir Sixskins trying to skin change into Thistle. He wants us to think about the idea of something skin changing a person, because I think he wants to build that up to a grander theme. And that is going to be Euron, the man who has used people, who has dominated people, who had, for his own twisted ends all of his entire life, is eventually going to have the same thing happen to him. That is going to be his ultimate, his karmic moment, is when something greater than he is ends up taking over him. And that is the whole Plan B Night's King.
That is a great point, Tim. The idea that George might be warming us up to this idea gradually. And what was I going to say? Thinking about the Forsaken chapter. Okay. Aeron sees Euron as he's on the Iron Throne, but his face is a squid face full of tentacles. Now, we know that Euron spits on the drowned god. Like, he laughs at the drowned god. He doesn't worship the drowned god that the Ironborn are thinking about. So what does it mean that his face is exploding with Cthulhu tentacles? It doesn't mean that he serves the drowned god. It means that a Cthulhu-like entity is going to manifest out of his face holes. Don't you think that that's what it means?
Yeah, because, that's exactly what it is, because that's the other, that's Hastur, the other cosmic entity in this that I talk about all the time, the King in Yellow. Hastur is a great old one like Cthulhu, but while Cthulhu lives in the sunken city of Ryla and associated with water, Hastur lives on the red star of Aldebaran, and he is associated with cosmic winds. And then that leads us to Euron being a storm god figure. But the storm god is the antagonist in the drowned god religion. And that's why it makes so much sense. Why is Euron doesn't believe in the drowned god, but he is a Kraken. He is a Greyjoy. And I've said many times, like, the sigils tell a story all its own. Why, if we wanted to follow this Cthulhu line, the Kraken on the Greyjoy sigil should be gray or green, either for Grey King or the Green Sea, or all the gray-green colors that are used with Cthulhu. Ryla is a gray-green stone city. But it's not. It's a yellow Kraken. And in Lovecraft, the yellow Kraken is the storm god, and he wars against his brother Cthulhu.
Right. Right. I follow you. And so the point is, yeah, this is not. This is definitely a clue that Euron is being potentially taken over by some sort of eldritch deity. And we also see Hands of White Fire Lady next to him. We don't have any idea who that is. That could be our first on-page depiction of one of these entities. Although you could argue Euron's face might be that as well. Or maybe we should be looking at the Sea Stone chair as a depiction of this entity. But yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, Chad is bringing up, like, Euron even says, I am the storm. When he says to Asha smugly, what do I control the wind? In The Forsaken, his whole speech starts with, the bleeding star bespoke the end. The bleeding star is the red comet. And again, Hastur lives on a red star, one that wanders and follows the Pleiades, which are ocean spirits. How does Euron travel so fast? It's like he's corrupting the Pleiades. The Pleiades were nymphs that were very important to sailors, but Euron is sort of making, it seems like this is a dark version of the Pleiades. Euron is sacrificing to these dark nymph spirits, and that's how he's able to achieve fast travel. That's the way I see it.
So here, you'll like this one, Tim. Just as R'hllor is similar to R'lyeh.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so George took Elric and Irkun from Elric of Melniboné, and he said two other names for Azor Ahai are Eldric, Shadow Chaser, and Hyrkoon, the hero. Well, why did he add the D? He changed Elric from Eldric to Eldric, because if you add an H on the end, it becomes Eldritch, like Eldritch Horrors. I guess
Eldritch.
it's a TCH it would be. But
Yeah.
it's a way of implying that Eldric Shadow Chaser, a.k.a. Azor Ahai, was tapping into Eldritch powers of the Black Stone, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I figured that one out last night. I was like, wait, Eldritch Shadow Chaser. That's him.
Yeah. But no, like I said, I think Euron is the quintessential Lovecraft character for this story. He is Obed Barsh. He is Enoch Bowen. He is all these Lovecraft characters who tampered with things that they were never meant to, and they paid by the end of the story, they paid the ultimate price for it.
Yeah, I was trying to think if Arioch is if his name is influencing anything in the story, but I don't think Arya's name is based on Arioch. So you've got some more quotes here. You want to read this next one?
Okay, this one's a long one. Nor is it thought that man is either the oldest or the last of Earth's masters, or the common bulk of life and substance walks alone. The old ones were, the old ones are, and the old ones shall be. Not in the spaces we know, but between them. They walk serene and primal, undimensional and undimensioned, and to us unseen. Yog-Sothoth knows the gate. Yog-Sothoth is the gate. Yog-Sothoth is the key and guardian of the gate. Past, present, future, all are one in Yog-Sothoth. He knows where the old ones broke through of old, and where they shall break through again. He knows where they had trod Earth's field, and where they still tread them, and why no one could behold them as they tread. By their smell can men sometimes know them near, but of their semblance can no man know, saving only in the features of those they have begotten on mankind, and those that are many sorts, differing in likeness from man's truest iodine to the shape without. Can you move that map? Can you move the mouse? Without sight or substance, which is them. They walk unseen and foul in lonely places where the words have been spoken and the rites howled up through at their seasons. The winds gibber with their voices, and the earth mutters with their consciousness. They bend the forest and crush the city, yet may not forest or city behold the hand that smites. Kadath and the cold waste have known them, and what man knows Kadath? The ice desert of the south and the sunken isles of ocean hold stones whereon their seals engraved. But who hath seen the deep frozen city, or the sealed tower, long garlanded with seaweed and barnacles? And you can see, like, George is playing with, like, he literally throws in Kadath and the Grey Waste, but then he also brings up, like, who hath seen the deep frozen city, sounds like the heart of winter, the sealed tower, Sounds like the High Tower, the Broken Tower at Winterfell,
Mm-hmm.
any other
Mm-hmm.
tower that you can throw in. Great Cthulhu is their cousin, yet he can spy them only dimly. Ea, Shub Niggurath, as a foulness ye know them. Their hand is at your throats, yet ye see them not. And their habitation is even one with your guarded threshold. Yog Sothoth is the key to the gate whereby the spears meet. Man rules now where they ruled once. They shall soon rule where man rules now. After summer is winter, after winter summer. They wait, patient and potent, for here they shall reign again.
Yeah, so this really captures the whole spirit of the thing, which are these entities that are just creeping in at the corners.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, all the deities are coming from the shadow realms, the dark of the wood, the deep sea, the shadow of Ashai. They are trying to break in, and they are looking for patsies and servants to help them do that. Like that is kind of how it always works in all of these stories if you believe in antagonistic gods. And that certainly seems to be the way that Martin sees his powers that be. So I think that one really captures the vibe of this. The only question to me at this point is like, are all these the same god, or are these different entities? You know, like if they're all meteors that came from the same comet moon impact, then they should all be kind of the same. But maybe they're not, because maybe when they land in different places, the consciousness mutates by interacting with the people there or the environment there.
I mean, in Lovecraft, they are all separate entities, and basically, Earth just becomes their new battlefield. They're just continuing the same wars they've been fighting for millennia. It's just that now humans become a new means of influence. And unlike any other creature they've ever come upon, humans are very, very, very useful. This is like, oh my god, this is my new favorite toy, is the way the Lovecraftian gods look at humans. I've never been able to have such influence. These things are amazing.
So the agenda of these gods usually is to sort of manifest and have power, right?
Yeah. It's conquer, control, and subjugation. Lovecraft was afraid of everything. He was an atheist who was very, very pessimistic. That is why, even when we get in the Lovecraft God, you could ask, well, who is the good god in Lovecraft? They end up being gods that aren't his creations. The closest thing to a benevolent god, I would say, in Lovecraft is Nodens, and that's something he ripped straight from Celtic myth.
Celtic.
Yeah. But his creations, the ones that are strictly OG Lovecraft, they're all either malevolent or just completely indifferent.
Well, let's talk about the different origins for gods. Like, I think the oldest gods embody parts of nature and also archetypes. Like a mother goddess is an archetype. It's an archetypal role and action. We see mothers, all throughout the natural kingdom. Obviously, human mothers, everyone understands. That's where babies come from. The miracle of life, reproducing, it all comes from the mother. And so mother goddesses are tied to broader concepts of fertility and reproduction, like the earth and the cycle of seasons. Like, this is an archetypal god. Most other gods are nature gods: the storm, the sea, the wind, fire, the sun, the sky, things like that. And these nature concepts then get paralleled with human concepts, like, oh, well, the father of the family watches over everyone, so that's like the sky god, and so on. But when you think about the Christian God and a monotheistic God is supposed to take care of everything. So they take on this role of they are the backbone of creation. They are the sun and the moon. They are responsible for everything. There's nothing that is outside of a God's plan like that. Okay. And so I think what Lovecraft is reacting to, and what a lot of atheists sort of feel, is okay, this is a human conception of a parent. This is Sky Daddy. This is people that are insecure and frightened about the fact that we do not know where we are or where we're going in this ocean of chaos. Shout out Timothy Leary or Bill Hicks. I forget which there's two different I'm talking about Tool, Tim. Prying open your third eye. The live version and the studio version, one has Leary, one has Bill Hicks, and I get them confused. But the point is, reality can be terrifying. And so some people think that humans believe in these Sky Father, parent, and Earth Mother gods because it's reassuring. We want to think that we have parents up there that are running things and looking out for us and making sure things don't get too messed up or whatever. So basically what we've got here with Lovecraft is he's saying, well, yeah, maybe I hate my parents, and maybe parents suck and authority figures suck, and maybe the gods are like that too. And so what if the gods aren't good parents? What if they're, go ahead.
I kind of get like that Tyler Durden line from Fight Club. It's like, we're the all-seeing, all-dancing crap of the world. Like, what if God didn't want you? Like, we are the we are fatherless children. And yet, like, when we look at the Christian God, you look at like the God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament, kind of seems like two very different characters. But no, they're supposed to be.
They are literally different characters, yeah.
And then you look at the 10 Commandments, right? And the first three are, I am your God, and you shall have no other gods other than me, and you will honor my day. Thou shalt not kill is the fifth commandment. So you think, like, if you're writing a top 10 list, the first one would be the most important, and thou shalt not kill is smack dab in the middle. The most important ones are honor me, worship me, yada, yada, yada. That is why, like, the God of the Old Testament comes off as like very angry and jealous and capricious, and it's why R'hllor is a jealous God. Like, again, you could see like R'hllor would also be the type of God saying like, "Thou shalt have no other gods than me." Any Certainly. Other one, and R'hllors do that. They burn the idols of other religions. They don't coexist peacefully.
Yeah. So Makora, when he meets Victarion, he's like, "Well, your drowned god is a demon. Bad news for you." Which is a scene I could have included. I could have gone back to that one in Shadowbinders, but like, oh, you're one to talk, Makoro. They're all demons.
Yeah, exactly. And that is the hypocrisy of man. It's always okay. It's okay when we do it, but not when you do it. Every side, I would say, pulls that hypocrisy every once in a while.
So that was from Dunwich Horror.
Yep. And so the Dunwich Horror, our main antagonist is a goat man. Yog-Sothoth is this god who sits at the outer edge of the universe. Like, theoretically, if you were to be able to travel through space and make it to the very edge where the universe ends, if a concept like that is even real, Yog-Sothoth will be there. He is the gate to the next two other universes. But Yog-Sothoth also, in the Dunwich Horror, he fathers a child through immaculate conception. So again, this is very dark Christ stuff, right? In the story, like this like old man Whately and lives with his albino daughter, and they're like the town rejects, like, right? Nobody wants to see these people. Then one day, all of a sudden, this woman, they show up in town, and there's a baby with them. And the thing that everyone doesn't speak of is like, well, who impregnated her? Who's doing? And the thing that goes unspoken is like, oh, this is probably a Craster situation. No, turns out this is actually a dark Jesus baby born of Yog-Sothoth, and this kid grows up way, way bigger and way faster than other kids. Like, he's walking at a few months. He's talking
like Magor.
At 4 years old, he sounds like someone who's lived for 30 years. Like, he's an old, kind of like how George, like how the Stark kids in the early books seemed like way older than they should be. Like, this kid is 4 years old, and yet he talks as if he's a professor at Harvard. And it's like, yeah, there's something really weird about this kid. And then the older he grows, the more goat-like he becomes. So finally, at the end, he's 8 feet tall. He has a full-on goat beard. And in most artistic depictions of him, he looks a lot like Vargo Hoat. And what happens in the Dunwich Horror is he's trying to get a copy of the Necronomicon, but they won't give it to him. So he tries to break it and steal it. So we got a story of this guy.
I kind of feel like the Necronomicon should be stolen and not purchased, but go ahead.
Yes, it's kept under lock and key and all that, so they won't let him check it out. So we got a story of this guy sneaking into a renowned university, trying to steal a book under lock and key of that is heavily censored and only a few copies of. Jock and Hagar is doing the same thing at the Citadel. And then what happens is when Wilbur Whately, that's the guy's name, when he breaks out, he ends up getting killed by guard dogs. Well, in A Song of Ice and Fire, George playing just, a little sneaky homage to this, Vargo Hoat, our goat man, is killed by Gregor Clegane, Tywin Lannister's mad dog. So George takes the story of Wilbur Whately, and like he does with a lot of things, he splits it into two pieces. Wilbur Whately, the goat man killed by a dog, as Vargo Hoat, yet at the same time, we also have a man trying to sneak into a university to try and steal a banned book. Now, I don't think Jock and Hagar is going to be killed by guard dogs at the Citadel, but I also don't think he's going to walk out of the Citadel with the book without any problems. I think much like Wilbur, there's going to be some shenanigans along the way.
Honestly, dude, if someone were to kill a faceless man, think about how much like cachet that would put on it. Like if Euron were to capture Jaqen and take his book and like chain him up in this, we'd be even more frightened of Euron than we are now.
Mm-hmm. And then Jaqen answers like, "But why? You're a returning customer."
Yeah, I thought we had a good working relationship here. Yeah, I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just, running with your idea there.
Yeah. We don't have to read all these. This is more like if something came up, I was like, I got something for this. But
this space there is a theme here I could see, just at a glance. Why don't you read this one?
Okay, so the great old ones dream forever of that coming time when they shall once more rule Earth and all that universe of which it is a part. Great Cthulhu shall rise from Ryla. Hastur, who is him who is not to be named, shall come again from the dark star which is near Aldebaran in the Hyades. Oh yeah, correction. It wasn't the Pleiades. It's the Hyades is the star cluster that's named after water nymphs that sailors.
I think it's Hyades, but yeah.
Hyades, yeah. Nyarlathotep shall howl forever in darkness where he abideth. Shub-Niggurath, who is the black goat with 1,000 young, shall spawn and spawn again, and shall have dominion over all the wood, nymph satyrs, leprechauns, and the little people. Yeah, so Shub-Niggurath, that is the black goat of Qohor. Again, it is a black goat god, so it's a horned god. She's also sometimes called the Lord of the Wood. So you kind of see like this horned god figure being associated with the forest and with forest nymphs and the little people of the forest. It's very children of the forest coded. And then, of course, Qohor is surrounded by dark forests. They wait forever at the gates, for the time draws near, the hour is soon at hand. While the elder gods sleep, dreaming, unknowing, there are those who know the spells put upon the great old ones by the elder gods, and shall learn how to break them, as already they can command the followers waiting beyond the doors from outside. Armor against witches and demons, against the deep ones, the Doles, the Vormis, the Chow Chow people, the abominable Migo, the Shoggoths, the Ghasts, the Volusians, those are the serpent people, and all such peoples and beings who serve the great old ones and their spawn, lie within the 5-pointed star, carved of gray stone from ancient Minar. And George also has the 7-pointed star, the Faith of the Seven in Lovecraft. One of the weapons against the great old ones is this 5-pointed star made of gray stone. The star stones, which is also another way of saying meteors.
Indeed.
The possessor of the stone shall find himself able to command all beings which creep, swim, crawl, walk, or fly, even to the source from where there is no returning. In Yi as in Great Ryla, in Yanathle as in Yoth, in Yagath as in Zothik, in Kadath in the cold waste as at the Lake of Hawley, in Carcosa as in Ib. It shall have power, yet even as stars wane and grow cold, even as stars die and the spaces between stars grow more wide, so wanes the power of all things, of the 5-pointed starstone as the spells put upon the great old ones by the benign elder gods. And there cometh a time, as once there was a time, when it shall be shown that That is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange eons even death may die.
Cool. Well, that really is
But you,
uplifting.
but you can kind of see like George, not just the, for one, there's all the Easter eggs that George throws in here, like Kadath and Carcosa and Ib. They're all in his world building, like out in the Far East. We're never going to go there. They're all just homages. But this idea of calling upon gods, trying to control them, trying to place spells upon them, trying to create wards against them. That's all of these are running themes throughout of A Song of Ice and Fire. It all depends on the character and what their motive is, how they are doing this. Whether they're trying to honor the gods like the faithful, whether they're trying to use the gods like Melisandre, or whether they're trying to literally become a god like Euron.
Yeah, well, that really lays out the motives and the sort of feel of it. That's definitely a pretty good one there.
Yeah, and then of course taking command of all which swims and creeps and crawls. Bran's doing that through skin. People are doing that. It's called skin changing. Wolves and birds, possibly sea creatures. Like we talked about the far winds at the Lonely Light. Are they skin changing spotted whales to be able to see things? Like theoretically, you can skin change almost any animal if you can form a bond with it or subjugate it or whatever.
Yeah, and so it does make you wonder, like, how much of this could some of these magic powers, like skin changing and green seeing, have originated with these meteors landing on the earth? Because again, the storm god's thunderbolt sets the tree on fire, and that's when Grey King is able to possess the fire of the gods. Mm-hmm. So it does seem like the meteors have altered the Weirwood net and allowed people to use it. So it's hard to say how much of it goes back to that, but the suggestion is there.
Yeah. And that can go back to like legends like the God on Earth and the Pearl Emperor. We are given legends of characters who, in and of themselves, would be half divine. And I just said in the Dunwich Horror, Wilbur Whately would be considered half divine. He's fathered by an elder one onto a human woman. Well, if the God on Earth, this first great emperor of the Great Empire of the Dawn, then has a son, the Pearl Emperor, but is fathered on a human woman, then we would have these sort of Christ-like figures who are half divine and would carry, and then throughout time, like, yeah, the bloodline gets thinner and thinner and thinner, but theoretically, if these gods are real and they were actually space aliens, then there could be a line of people who still can trace a lineage back to that. And that's where we start to see like how some of these magical things like skin changing or dragon dreams end up in a bloodline. It goes back to some kind of godly ancestor, which is a being that came from the stars.
So what do you think? Can we get more specific about the motivations of these different ice and fire entities? Like, what is R'hllor trying to do versus what is the Great Other trying to do versus the drowned god? You know, the black stone entity that's under the water. Like, they want power and subjugation. So they're each just trying to convert the earth to their preferred environment. So everyone will fall slave to their... Like, if the whole world is frozen over, everyone becomes whites.
Yeah. Like, I joke, but I think like the R'hllor and Great Other, they are like the darkest version of Heat Miser and Cold Miser from the Year Without a Santa Claus. But yeah, I do think they are trying to terraform the world to their liking, and they're trying to get humans to do their bidding. It's just both are evil, but we've said, like, look, the lesser evil is still evil. In the realm, if we're talking strictly R'hllor and the Great Other, R'hllor seems like the less evil of the two, because the Great Other seems to just want to freeze the world and snuff out all life.
I don't think R'hllor's all about burning children and stuff. I don't think there's any less.
I think it's more like R'hllor.
Are you just saying a summer without end is more pleasant than a winter without end? All the plants are still dying either way.
No, I'm saying one wants to rule the world, the other wants to destroy the world. The one who wants to rule the world still has to have life at some level.
Perhaps. I'm trying to sort out the idea that, like, in general, obviously Dany needs to use her dragons to fight the others. That seems clear. And the trap for Danny seems to be like using dragons to become a tyrant and conquer Westeros. And what she needs to do is put down the idea of the Iron Throne and take the dragons north and all that. And Quaithe is trying to encourage her to do that. And that's why I was saying, hey, don't assume that Quaithe is pure evil just because she's a Shadowbinder from Ashai. She wants Dany to take her dragons north. That's good. Mm-hmm. So doing this research on R'hllor being a demon and stuff, it's like, okay, well, where am I now with this? Are we trusting Quaithe or not? What does Quaithe want for Dany? Does R'hllor essentially want to use Dany and her dragons to wipe out the others completely so that fire magic is what everyone will have to worship? Or is it the case that like Dany's using this dragon power and she's going to have followers of R'hllor helping her, and Jon's going to be resurrected by Mel probably. So they're using the power of the shadow and R'hllor. Like they really can't get around it. But is there something they've got to do that's contrary to the will of the fire god if they want to, like, it's not just a total victory for the fire god that we want, just as we don't want a total victory for the great other. So what are they going to do that's going to like balance things and sort of piss off both demon gods?
Yeah, because I do think using R'hllor as a means to an end, but ultimately not giving him exactly what he wants, because ultimately what R'hllor wants what R'hllorists want is for it to be the one and only worldwide religion. I think that's fair to say. The way they act, the way they dismiss other religions. I think obviously Jon and Dany wanted to create more of a peaceful world where people of all different cultures and religions can coexist together. That flies in the face of being the one dominant religion, and that probably becomes the thing that, like, R'hllor is useful for the fire magic and defeating the others, but ultimately having him come out as the one and only god is a whole other. It's just a different flavor of evil. It's all it is. Like I said,
I wouldn't want to have to worship R'hllor.
Yeah. And that's the difference between, like, that's why I said, like, which one, if one wants to rule and one wants to destroy, one only wants to destroy, both options are bad, but the one that wants to rule is the one that's going to, at the very, very minimum, allow for some kind of life to exist, but only those that worship him.
Maybe. I don't know that George is implying that one is less bad than the other, though, is my point. I think he's just kind of saying that extremes are bad.
I think he's trying to show two different kinds of evil. Like, at the end of the day, you're supposed to reject both R'hllor and the Great Other.
Right. I guess that does make sense. Like, fire is like the quick destruction, whereas ice is more like subjugation. Like, yeah, that kind of does make sense.
You could always have that hypothetical of, like, gun to your head, R'hllor or the Great Other. These are your only options. Which do you choose? And then someone's like, well, those are both crappy choices. Where's my third option? There is no third option. This is all you get.
Yeah, the Drown God's not going to save you. Okay. That's cool. So a couple things I forgot to mention from the last two videos. One, the Balrogs from Tolkien, who are Maiar spirits, they're creatures of flame and shadow. That is probably where George got that phrase, flame and shadow, to describe R'hllor. So comparing him to a Balrog, that's not good. That means he's a demon. And the other thing is the fact that the R'hllorists always worship R'hllor at night. You don't worship sun gods at night. Mm-hmm. You worship sun gods during the day. It's him. Yeah.
Or, well, shadows are the servant of light, but it's like, no, shadows are created by how are shadows? Shadows
the obstruction of light.
The obstruction of light. Thank you. That was it. So it's like, are they real? I mean, yeah, light is necessary for shadows to be there, but that doesn't mean that they're the servants of the light. Seems more like they're the servants of the obstruction, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I know they're praying for R'hllor to bring back the day or whatever, but it's like, dude, you worship the sun god during the day. You worship him at the solstice. Like, they're always worshiping R'hllor at night because he's a shadow demon.
Yeah, but then the people in the Shadowlands will look at you and say, dude, the sun's only out for 1 hour a day. We're doing the best we can.
So I will, I think I want to wrap it up pretty soon here. This is pretty much what we've come to talk about. I will definitely solicit last questions from the chat. And I'll go back and see if we missed any super chats. There were a little more super chats today than usual. R'hllor is the Elric thing for the Targaryens. Oh, Ariok. Yeah, sort of. But it's the thing is the Targaryens don't worship R'hllor. I think you meant the Valyrians. The Valyrians didn't worship R'hllor either. R'hlorism is popular in former Valyrian cities, so it wouldn't surprise me if there were a fair amount of Valyrian citizens that might have worshipped R'hllor. But supposedly they worship gods that were named after their dragons, or vice versa. Would the book Death of Dragons be equivalent of the King in Yellow? Does the King in Yellow have a book?
The King in Yellow is a book. The King in Yellow it's supposed to be a 3-act play, but the book has been banned. Like the Necronomicon, like Unisprachlich and Colton, which I have here. It's one of these like heavily banned, heavily censored books. Only a few copies are known to exist. And the idea is that if you were to read the entire book, you will go mad. In the King in Yellow, we are given bits and fragments of this play, but only from Acts 1 and 2. Nothing from Act 3 is ever mentioned, even supposed to be a 3-act play. And obviously, the play is banned. No one is allowed to put on any kind of actual production. And if there were to ever actually be a production of this play, it would more than likely end in some kind of calamity.
We did mention the George quote. He basically, what did he say? Basically, that we probably won't see them.
Yeah, he says we're never going to see like literal gods on page.
Yeah.
Like the King in Yellow isn't going to come in like the way he does in the Court of the Dragon. Cthulhu's not going to show up. Like the Drowned God's not going to show up the way Cthulhu does in Call of Cthulhu.
I do think we're going to hear his voice coming out of Euron's face, though, potentially.
I do think so that's the thing, because if Aeron dies, and I've said because I think Aeron is going to be the dead man at the prow of the ship, which is taken from Dracula, we're going to have someone who's familiar with Euron to notice some kind of difference in his voice, if that becomes the thing. That's the problem with Euron not being a POV, is that if he does get piloted by some other entity, I don't think we're really gonna notice. We're gonna have to be reading between the lines, looking for the clues that say this is not the Euron you knew before. This is something else entirely.
Yeah, if his face literally became tentacles, that'd be probably too obvious. And we talked about the idea of the dragon spirit and R'hllor at the beginning of the stream, actually, for the person asking about that. Fluke of Makeup, what's up? She recorded a Halloween video with us in the background. Nice. She's a friend of mine that has a makeup channel with way more subs than we have here. Let me tell you. Yeah. If you want some makeup tutorials, check out her channel.
Maybe if Euron speaks and he says something like "we are" instead of "I am," and it becomes like a "we are Legion" type deal, that might be like one of the key clues that something else is piloting him.
Well, so you finished Alien Earth now, right? You're caught up?
No, I have not finished.
Oh, okay.
If you need to tell me something, just feel free. It's fine.
Well, how many episodes are you in?
I'm only 2 episodes in.
Okay. Yeah, never mind. We'll talk later.
Okay.
Okay, cool, guys. Well, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and finish up here. We've gone about 2 hours. I don't think this needs to go any further. I think we've made the point. It's, again, not something that we're going to see on page. It's going to come to the forefront of the story, but we will see probably more clues that this is what's going on.
Although we'll have to see. This next one, the one passage translated from a nameless cult, is interesting because it relates to possibly Bran as a character.
Okay, sure. Fire it up.
So, the king who rules the Dark Empire, which was a revival of an older, darker empire dating back into the Stone Age, and of the great nameless cavern where stands the Dark Man, the image of Bran Mac Morn, carved in his likeness by a master hand while the great king yet lived, and to which each worshipper of Bran makes a pilgrimage once in his or her lifetime. Yes, that cult lives today in the descendants of Bran's people. A silent, unknown current, it flows on in the great ocean of life, waiting for the stone image of the great Bran to breathe and move with sudden life and come from the great cavern to rebuild their lost empire. So that is Robert E. Howard from Children of the Night. So when the age of Conan ends, the next series starts with the age of Bran Mac Morn, who is the last king of the Picts. And this is during the era of the Roman Empire. So this is all Hadrian's Wall stuff, savage barbarian kings being hired by the Romans as mercenaries. Bran is the last king, but after his life, he becomes a legendary figure almost to the level of godhood. But then this idea, the followers of Bran, it made me think so much of Brandon Stark being our last king, and the followers and devotees, and what happens after the last king, the last Green Seer, dies. Will he become a sort of godlike figure in his own right years and years after he's gone because of the deeds he did on Earth?
Well, this is great. So a lot of ideas obviously are popping in George's mind. There's a nameless cavern where there's a statue and everyone goes to make a pilgrimage there. Well, Bran makes a pilgrimage to Bloodraven's cave. Bloodraven is a statue. And then in Winterfell, we have the statues in the crypts, some of which are named Bran. And so here we're talking about waiting for the stone image of Bran to come to life from the crypts, from the great cavern. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Or like the one video you did where with the Weirwood door at the Black Gate, and that might be Bran the Builder.
Right.
The big head because of the story of Bran's head underneath the Tower of London.
Right. And potentially this is inspired by the Tower of London story as well. And obviously Bran Mac Morn, we're going back to Bran Mac Faval from Irish and Welsh folklore. There's a bunch of Brans running around. So yeah, this is very similar. He's sleeping underground. So that's cool. That's very tantalizing.
And of course, yeah, him being the king of the Picts. So we think, and Hadrian's Wall was like the big real world inspiration that got George started on all of this.
That's cool. Yeah, and the Black Gate is another pilgrimage site. It's the Night Fort, so that makes sense.
Yeah, but it means that, like, yeah, if Bran is the last king and he downloads the Weirwood net and he spends the rest of his life writing everything he saw, then who's to say that years, decades, maybe centuries after his death, he isn't looked back upon as some kind of like godlike figure for all that he did? And that translates. So, like, is it possible? Well, yeah, because it happened with Bran Mac Morn. Here's another Bran.
So the thing I wanted to say about the Seven, thanks for reminding me, Stu Pike's sister, was that they seem to have mythology based on stars falling to Earth. That's where the kingship of Hugor of the Hill comes from. Father pulls down 7 stars, makes his crown, now he's king. But they don't seem to have any magic or black stone or anything. So it seems like this is a case where a story got detached from the actual magical artifact and then mutated over time. And so they've got this version of the myth. But yeah, it doesn't seem like they've got any secret black stone anywhere.
Yeah, but isn't like the beast pulling down stars from the heavens like the beast in Revelation? And that becomes like another. So even the Seven has its own like demonology part of it, because the story sounds like something that the Satan figure does in Revelation.
Well, 7 stars would be Pleiades. But the beast does. I think he pulls down a third of the stars or something like that. So that's what I have to say about the 7, is like they just seem like a myth that has its roots in the star stones but has gotten disconnected from it. And so now it's basically just a cultural religion. But yeah, that's not to say anything about what Starry Wisdom cultists may be doing inside the faith of the 7. That's totally different. So All right, guys. Well, yeah, I'm gonna get back to working on my cold hands video. Thank you, Tim, for just everything, all the knowledge, and dropping by the streams and all that. And thank you all for watching the videos, like I said. And hopefully, we'll get that Night of the Seven Kingdoms trailer this week.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah, they've dropped a couple of new photos, so
Yeah,
excitement is building.
The photos looked great. Like Quinn, the GM, posted one. He says it's like something straight out of Night of the Seven Kingdoms. And I looked at it, I'm like, yeah, it's like somebody really took the artwork and made a real world photograph of it. It looks great.
And there's been a couple of quotes floating around from Ira Parker, one of the showrunners, talking about how we're going to keep this story firmly rooted in the view of the common people, and how the Targaryen sort of authority has been eroded because they haven't had dragons in 50 years and stuff. So it sounds like they understand the perspective of the story pretty well.
Knock on wood, we'll keep it that way.
Yep, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. All right, guys. Well, thanks a lot again for watching the videos recently. And Sean, what are you talking about? No, that's only for you, babe. Only for you. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. And like I said, I'll either see you this week with a breakdown of the trailer or a cold hands video. So cheers.